Welcome to episode 182 of Timm Talk, the podcast about the DC animated universe, co-created by Bruce Timm. I'm Chris Lord.
I'm Cameron Dexter.
And we're back this week with some more Justice League.
Yes.
We're finally watching the episodes you thought we were going to be reviewing last week.
Yes.
The Terror Beyond.
The Terror of Cthulhu.
The Terror of Cthulhu?
It's Cthulhu.
It's just Cthulhu.
It's
just...
Dwayne McDuffie's take on Lovecraft.
Exactly. It's blatantly Cthulhu. Now, I was super excited for these because these are actually some of my favorite episodes. Now, you started to watch them last week. You finished them this week. What did you think of them?
The opening is great.
Okay.
And then for me, it kind of, once they revealed Cthulhu,
Mm-hmm.
which was a very weird reveal as the cliffhanger.
Okay.
Kind of lost me at that point.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I love these episodes. These have been some of my favorite so far.
I love Atlantean stories in both DC and out of DC.
Yeah.
I love theorizing about why Atlantis sank. I love Cthulhu stories separate from Atlantean stories. I think that there was too many things brewing in this pot.
Just too much.
Kinda, yeah.
Too many cooks.
Too many cooks. Too many fates. Too many different kinds. Because we had Grundy magic, which is based off of kind of New Orleans.
Yeah, a little bit of kind of voodoo.
Yeah, that's the word.
A little bit, yeah.
Grundy's kind of voodoo magic. Dr. Fate is very celestial magic.
Mm-hmm.
Hawk Girl is very Thanagarian, outer space, different kind of cosmic magic.
Like alien / science /
Then
magic.
Atlantean magic is in there. There's just because like obviously last week's episode I argued it was
fair.
Almost not enough magic.
Well, last week we were saying there wasn't enough magic, but also that there was just too many things happening. There, like, okay, that's fair. Like, the thing we were both complaining about last week, I just seem to not care about this week, and that there's just too many things going on. Because, like, at the end of the day, I really like these because of the Hawk Girl Grundy story. And I know part of the reason I like them so much is because when they revisit that story in Justice League Unlimited, that episode is one of my all-time favorites.
Yes.
And we won't say exactly what happens, but when we get to it, we'll talk about it obviously in depth. And it's a very poignant episode. And so, like I guess I'm maybe bringing in some of that. I don't want to call it baggage because what's the opposite of baggage? Baggage is negative. Bringing in some of that love, joy. I don't know.
Yeah, joy. I guess that's an emotion some people feel nowadays.
I fail to understand the concept, but I'm bringing some of that with me into this.
Yeah.
Which is part of the reason I liked it so much. But I found myself having to stop and remind myself to take notes because I was just watching them just to watch them and enjoy them.
And I took a lot of notes, and it made me not enjoy them because I got to question everything.
Well, maybe you just got to find a nice happy medium.
Yes.
Somewhere in the middle, just like kind of casual notes.
And I will, based off of your point that you just made and the arguments that I get against me all the time, where people say, because I'm still at this point standing that JLU is better than Justice League.
I agree with that.
Okay. A lot of people don't.
Who doesn't agree with that?
A lot of my friends, mostly my friend group.
Do they understand?
Well, so here's my point. And to what you just said, the best episodes of Justice League are when they team up with other members.
Yeah.
Which is just what JLU is. That's the whole premise of JLU. No, so when you're coming at me, not you, but people online / my friend group, when they're coming at me and they're like, oh, you know, JLU is just a hodgepodge of like superhero, they just want to like show off who's in their gallery. I'm like, yeah, because that's cool. I mean, I want to see that.
I'm sure some of your friends listen to this, and I'm sorry, I probably don't know most of you, but you're just wrong. JLU is better. Like it tackles both anthology storytelling with kind of random heroes, which are these kind of fun one-off episodes, and it has some of the best serialized, some of the only serialized storytelling in all of the DCAU. Like the stuff they were doing so well in JLU eventually became the stuff that makes Young Justice so good.
Yeah.
Like it's a precursor to that. I think it's the ultimate evolution of this universe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's
that's what I've been trying to tell them for a while.
Yeah, and characterization.
But there's Starcrossed. I'm like, I've never seen Starcrossed, and a lot of people hate me for that.
Starcrossed is amazing.
Yes, and I've heard that from every single person online ever.
And me on this podcast a lot during this season.
Yes. I'm sure I'll love it when I see it in a couple weeks.
Look, we're getting into a home stretch here of some of the best of Justice League. So we're going to be doing Hereafter and coming up pretty soon here. I don't know if it's maybe next week or the week following. That's a great two-parter.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting Wild Card, which is when the Joker... have you seen that one when the Joker takes over the casino in Vegas?
Ooh, no.
Okay, that's a really fun one too. We're getting Comfort and Joy, the holiday episode.
Great.
Like, we're getting some really good stuff coming up here. But to my recollection, the episodes that stand out the most are often JLU.
Yeah. Because it's they wrap up all of the stuff they're setting up here. I mean, it's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same points we made during Superman of like, we know some of this is a drag, and I'm not saying any of these are drags.
Yeah.
But like,
last week
was.
last week was a
but
drag.
like, yeah, like the thing we kept thinking about and mentioning during Superman was like they're setting everything up. We met Dr. Fate 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We met, Kyle Rayner 4 years ago, and I started to learn about the Green Lanterns back then. Aquaman was set up back then.
Yeah.
Even though this is technically a different Aquaman.
I mean, I think it's supposed to be like more or less the same Aquaman.
Yeah.
But I don't think we even included a fish story on our short list.
No, we didn't.
I have it somewhere, and I'm pretty sure it's like, nah, we don't need this.
It's like, yeah, they're so good at setting up the nuggets that they're going to kind of complete later.
Exactly. And I think even the better way of looking at it, it's not that they're setting up the nuggets they're going to complete later, but that the later shows are really good about picking up threads that never were fully completed to a satisfying conclusion and finding a way to give them a satisfying conclusion.
Yeah.
I'd say, with the exception maybe being Batman, who unfortunately they just weren't able to tell Batman stories at that point because of the Bat embargo that was happening at the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I just thought it's because once Kevin Conroy sang, there's like, we did it.
It's peaked. I mean, they did peak at that point. They definitely did. But no, it was because of the Nolan trilogy. Well, it wasn't a trilogy yet at that point, but Batman Begins came out. And then right after that, they basically said, okay, we're going to very strictly limit what Batman stories can be told in other mediums, basically in cartoons, to hold on to things for like what would become the Nolan trilogy, which is why, for example, in The Batman, which is the cartoon that came out like around the same time, just like sort of cross promote, we don't get Ra's al Ghul, we don't get Scarecrow, we don't get Two-Face. They just held on to a lot of those. Like some characters they couldn't avoid. Like you had to have the Joker in there no matter what. Yeah,
and that's a very unique take on the Joker. Every character in that series is very different than...
It is. I actually mostly like them.
I hated it when it came out.
Okay.
Because Teen Titans was out.
Yeah.
While that was going on. And that was clearly, at least for me, the superior show.
I haven't revisited Titans, so I can't really get into debate with you on that. But I will say this, for anyone who's been skeptical about revisiting The Batman, and I honestly don't know if it's up on HBO Max yet or not. But I would say watch at least the first two seasons. I think the first two are really good stories about a young Bruce Wayne just taking on the mantle of the Batman. In season 3, they bring in Jim Gordon and Batgirl, and then season 4, they bring in Robin. In season 5, they start doing some Justice League stuff, and it got a little bit more kidified at that point, and they started drawing some more blatant inspiration for the 1960s, more campy stories, and it just didn't land quite as well. But those first two, I still hold up as being really, really good and different, but really great character designs as well.
I don't see The Batman.
Oh, okay. Well, it doesn't matter. We're not here to talk about The Batman, are we? Or even Teen Titans, Cameron. I'm so sorry. We are ultimately...
we will always talk about Teen Titans. This will always be a secret backdoor pilot for Titans
Talk. Podcast entropy. We inevitably start talking about Teen Titans. But no, we're here to talk about The Terror Beyond.
Yes. Do you want to give us a quick rundown of what happened in these episodes?
Yeah, exactly. So let me go through kind of a quick thing. So let's before I get into like the full-on synopsis, let's at least talk about the rather surprising cold open. Because it sees the army chasing down Grundy for no real reason, I think, other than he's just a villain and they're trying to capture him. But they basically get him pinned on a pier, and it looks like he's finally going to get taken out by some massive weird energy tank beam thing that they have in this universe. And right before that happens, a giant sea serpent busts out of the water, and Aquaman is riding its back. And it's like, nah, brah, he's coming with me. And he like jumps in, takes out the army, and steals Grundy. And you're like, wait, what the hell is this? Like, I mean, because you hadn't seen these before.
No.
And so obviously it's been 2 weeks now, but you watched that opening. What was your thought at the end of that cold open? Because that's a pretty bold way to start off an episode.
Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just so like caught up in it.
Yeah.
It's like, where is this going? Because that's such a unique team up of Aquaman and Grundy.
Yeah, right?
Again, like I mentioned before, they're from such different worlds.
Well, they both came from water.
It's true.
As we come
A
to
source
learn.
of water,
Yeah.
yes. A puddle, a very muddy puddle.
They both have significant water-based origins.
Yeah. It's like you, I was born from water. It's like, I don't remember that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Grundy confused.
Yeah, and this is a good Grundy episode.
It is. I mean, I think it's well,
he only has 3.
yeah, it's kind of the only real Grundy focused one. I think he always got good moments in the previous episodes that he was in.
Yeah.
But this is the first one that really gives him proper storytelling and does a really nice job with it too. But yes, I mean, we get that very surprising cold open, and I haven't seen these in 17 years whenever they originally aired, so I vaguely recall things, but I don't remember all the details. So when that happened, I was like, oh shit, that's how this starts? I completely forgot about this. But yeah, so basically Aquaman saves Grundy from the military, and then we learn that Aquaman and Dr. Fate need Grundy to complete a spell that will seal a breach that is allowing ancient monsters, aka
the old ones,
aka
yeah.
Cthulhu,
yeah,
to break into our dimension. And so that's kind of all happening as like I'd say the more or less the A story here. And then Superman, Wonder Woman, Hawkgirl don't know that this is going on yet. All they know is that sea monsters are attacking people.
Mm-hmm.
They immediately suspect that's Aquaman. So they basically go on a journey to try and track down where Aquaman is that eventually leads them to Dr. Fate's tower. And then they see what appears to be Grundy being tortured during this incantation, this spell. But it's actually them trying to seal this breach. And when the Justice League interrupts it, some pretty sweet fights ensue. And then all thing falls apart. And then, of course, the breach fails and pops through little spindly-legged Cthulhu.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's
one of those situations where an email could have saved so much time. Just a letter. Like, they all know each other. Aquaman knows the Justice League.
Yeah.
Justice League knows Fate. Or at least Superman knows Fate.
Superman knows him, yeah.
Fate can teleport anywhere at any time, whenever, wherever. Just be like, hey, guys, just so you know, there's a cosmic breach that's about to take over the planet. I know that's kind of your thing that you've been handling for the past 2 years. But I'm going to take this one. We're going to take Grundy. It's going to hurt him a little bit, but, he's immortal.
Yeah.
Superman, it's about as damaging as one of your punches. So just like, I'll let you know when everything's cool.
Yeah.
And we can come and party in the alternate dimension later.
Look, I do agree with you that this all hangs on them just not having a very quick conversation. It would take a minute, maybe max.
Yeah, and even at the beginning
this.
of part 2, they're like, "Hey, can you explain this?" Like, we don't have time. It's like, but you
time.
do.
Make
Yeah,
time,
you
yeah.
do. You just banished him back to the portal,
Look, and
you can literally teleport instantaneously anywhere.
I will agree with you that the justification they use for getting everyone to fight to kind of put some action padding this episode doesn't hold up to even like the most cursory scrutiny. But I will say that I guess I'm willing to forgive that because I like what this episode is doing overall. It's basically doing setup, mystery, and action. And I think it's doing all 3 of those pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's setting up what's going to happen in episode 2 in terms of laying out why this odd collection of people is together. Why are Grundy, Fate, and Aquaman together?
And why are they using a Thanagarian spell?
Exactly. Why are they using a Thanagarian spell? It starts setting up a little bit more backstory on Hawkgirl, which we haven't really had up till now, and is going to be
We learn her name.
We do learn her name, exactly. Good old Shire Hall. And, this is all going to be necessary setup for Starcrossed. It's impossible for me not to mention Starcrossed. Kind of dancing around it constantly. But, it's doing all that setup pretty well. I think, yeah, the mystery could be solved by a quick conversation, but I find it at least mostly intriguing.
Yeah.
Like,
I think for me, at least, I just finished rereading Prisoner of Azkaban.
okay.
Hours before watching these episodes. And so that ending is also very frustrating where Sirius, when they finally meet Sirius, and he's like being so vague about, I didn't actually kill him. It was actually our friend Peter.
Yeah.
And you're like, just fucking say that. Just say it. Don't dance around like, well, technically I killed them. It's like, no, you didn't. You may think you did.
Yeah.
You may blame yourself, but you didn't. Just tell him you didn't. Tell him it's this other guy who's been acting like a rat for the past 12 years.
Mm-hmm. I guess, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of Dwayne McDuffie pulling from the J.K. Rowling School of Writing, which is save all your exposition to the very end.
Yeah.
Including revealing that you're a horrible monster.
Yes.
Yes.
Dwayne McDuffie wasn't a monster, was he?
No, but J.K. Rowling is.
Yeah, I know she is.
Yeah,
no,
McDuffie's amazing.
Yeah.
He's like a fucking legend, and gone too soon, obviously. But yeah, like, there is an element of that. Like, they could have just solved this very quickly by chatting. But I will say that they allude enough to what's going on. Like, even when they're doing this spell, they haven't laid out why they're doing it. They just keep saying, like, we're going to seal this breach, and they keep saying words like breach or something like that in the context of casting the spell. Plus, we get Fate just like constantly, like, what does it say? Like, by the hand of Fate or something like that, or then a Fate demands.
Yeah, Fate demands.
Fate demands.
Yeah, hand of Fate is Digimon.
That's right. Also worth acknowledging right up here that this is a voice casting change also for Fate, who I can't remember who he was. Let's see, George De Hoyo in Superman, but in this case it's Oded Fair, who I fucking love. You may not know who that is, but he was, I guess, is he the Magi? I forget his name in The Mummy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He also appears in the most recent season of Star Trek Discovery. He's been in constant stuff left and right. But I mean, one of the great voices.
That's fun.
Yeah. Also, kind of a slight tangent here. Have you seen that meme? People saying, like, my sexuality is the cast of The Mummy. And it's just like Brendan Fraser, Rachel Weisz, Oded Fair, and then I forget who plays, is it Nefertiti? Anoxinamun, that's right. Yeah, but it's like those four people, and you're like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the most beautiful cast ever. But no, I love him, and I think he's great as Dr. Fate. Like, he gives it a really amazing gravitas, because a lot of those lines could be really silly.
Yeah, and Fate as a character, like, I love Dr. Fate.
Oh,
and I
same.
love Nobu.
Yeah. I haven't been, but I heard the food's good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I've also never been. I can't afford it.
Nor can I.
And a lot of that love stems from Young Justice, where he gets amazing arcs.
Yes, he does. Yeah.
But yeah, he is kind of this very vague character, and he can get away with these vague notions. But like, if someone say anything, like, I'm so tired, and like, it is the frustrating part of, like, I understand why, because you have Aquaman, who is a king, and he has to explain himself to no one except Mira.
Yeah.
And then you have Fate, who has to explain himself to no one.
Yeah.
Ever. It's like, this is what the universe said, and like, well, fuck you. Like, no, it didn't.
I guess I can.
Grundy's just Grundy.
He's just Grundy. He doesn't understand. I'm a little bit more forgiving here, I think, because it's still absurd they don't just talk, but I can kind of buy it from these characters. The only one who I don't buy from is Superman, who I feel like should have been making a bigger effort to step in, be like, hey, let's stop fighting and talk. Because everyone else is a very, like, action-focused person ahead of time. And I think even their pairing of the heroes is really clever when they do splinter off into fight. So it's Superman up against Grundy, who you can't really reason with Grundy, so he has kind of no choice but to fight. And then you have Wonder Woman against Aquaman, so the two royals. And there comes an arrogance with that, like a sense of superiority. And I think Wonder Woman suffers from it a lot less than Aquaman. And she still has it.
Fight, though, this specific fight, this is, and I even put this in my notes, this is the first time, at least in American animation, that I like saw a fighting style in the animation. Oh, like, interesting. The way Wonder Woman fights Aquaman is very different from how it's not just straight head in, I'm gonna punch you until one of us falls.
Yeah.
Like, you see her thinking about the moves she's doing, and she's very, like, it does feel like a fight between royals, where like, these are people that were both trained by the best, most ancient deities. Yeah. And you see her, like, being almost fighting defensively and fighting like almost like a Batman would fight.
No, I mean,
against him, because he's just going headstrong, and she's on the more like, hey, we don't have to do this, but if you want to get into this, then I'll fucking get into this.
Yeah. If you want to rumble, we'll rumble.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. I mean, they're both warrior races at the end of the day. I don't remember there being a lot of interaction between the Amazons and the Atlanteans in the DC AU specifically. Obviously, in other iterations, there's more stuff like Flashpoint. It's a whole arc. But, there is a lot of similarity between those two. I mean, they're ancient secluded races that are born natural warriors. Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason I like this episode, is that the individual fights were super interesting. I think that was my favorite too. Like, I believe they would kill each other.
Oh yeah.
I think Wonder Woman
And also like both of them be proud about it.
Yeah.
Like this is great because you were like a worthy opponent.
Exactly. And there is this sort of like slight simmering of respect between the two of them a little bit. I think there is an appreciation of each other's prowess, but obviously Aquaman is the much more arrogant and headstrong of the two.
Yeah.
Maybe less likely to show it. But, I fully believe that, if no one stopped to intervene, they would kill each other. And given how the fight ends, it's not too far off. I mean,
Yeah.
it goes for a while, and then Aquaman just basically grabs Wonder Woman and drags her underwater until he just drowns her till she's unconscious.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a thing you can really do to someone.
In cartoons
drowning.
and kid show, I feel like that's the go-to
Yes.
of like non-violent incapacitating.
Exactly. Just smother them with water until they're not yet dead.
Yeah.
But almost kind of dead.
Yeah. Straddling that line.
Yes. But I mean, it's pretty intense. It's a pretty intense moment.
Yeah.
And then when they go back to the portal, Aquaman's just carrying Diana and she's unconscious. And then, the other fight is between Hawkgirl and Dr. Fate. And that's an interesting one because this is the first time we've seen that Hawkgirl's mace has an effect against magic.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know that up to this
Nth
point.
metal.
Yeah. We don't even know that it's nth metal yet.
That's true. Yeah.
We just know now that it has an effect on magic. I mean, she can break through Dr. Fate's tower. She can deflect his energy blast, that sort of thing, which is a huge reveal. We didn't know that about her at all. And we'll come to learn that it's because Thanagarian technology was gifted to them by Cthulhu/Cthulhu, way back in the day. But it's rare that I buy into a hero-on-hero fight.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this more or less worked, and I thought the pairings were really interesting. And for filler action, they were at least good fight sequences to watch.
There was a great line in when we first see the trio, and to your point, I think it's why Superman is this is at least how I perceived this moment, because there's a great line that Hawkgirl says to Superman when they're in the Quinjet.
Oh, yeah.
Which is not the Quinjet.
The Javelin.
The Javelin, thank you. Do you ever get chafed straddling the line so much?
Yep.
Which is beautiful writing. I love that line so much.
It's a great line. It's a great delivery of the line too. And I mean, Hawkgirl gets a lot of one-liners over the course of the series. Here she gets a whole bunch of them.
Oh yeah, this episode was chock full of good one-liners.
So good. I mean, even early on when they're trying to fight off the sea monster that's attacking a cruise ship, and one of them says, Hera, give me strength. Hawkgirl's response is, must you say that all the time?
Yes.
Which is funny because she really doesn't say it all the time.
She said it 3 times.
Yes, exactly.
And as I was, because I'm sure you read the same facts.
Yeah.
Hawkgirl's never around when she said it.
No, yeah.
This is the first time she's heard it.
I imagine that Wonder Woman's just saying it maybe gratuitously all the time. Like it's a late night shift at the Watchtower, and Wonder Woman's falling asleep. She's like, "Oh, Hera, give me strength. I'm falling asleep."
Well, hold on, who's wisdom? At least in Shazam.
I don't know. This is your territory,
Solomon?
Cameron. I think Solomon. Yeah, right.
No, Solomon is
The Wisdom of Solomon, right?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
I like to think that she does it like everywhere all the time.
Just-
So she's doing like the Sunday crossword.
Yeah.
It's like, Solomon, give me wisdom. It's like, it's fucking 9:30, Wonder Woman.
Just let it go, please. Let it go.
Yeah.
Hawkgirl just
Hephaestus, give me patience. Like, fuck off.
Hawkgirl just standing there like weighing her mace, like, I could do it.
I could do it.
I could do it.
Batman would understand. He'd have my back.
Yeah, but it's
So the point I was making is I feel like Superman is more, I feel like that line may have gotten to him a little bit.
Yeah.
He doesn't show it, but he's just like, well, I'm not straddling the fence. You're gonna punch. I'll punch too.
Yeah.
I'll show you that I'm not straddling the fence.
the only way you can bruise him is to bruise his ego,
Yeah.
or to hit him with a magical tentacle,
Or just be Batman.
or to be Batman.
Steal
It's
blows
all the
from him.
time. Also, now that I think about it, maybe part of the reason I like this episode so much is there's a lot of bare chest in this, isn't there?
There
'Cause
is.
Aquaman just refuses to wear a shirt all the time. Good on
Yeah,
him.
get wet.
Yeah, that would be silly.
Do you know one of the worst feelings in the world is when you have a wet T-shirt that won't unstick from you.
That is absolutely true. Yeah. I mean, he's not full on Namor running around in just a Speedo, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But there's still enough to kind of make it work. So you get him. Superman takes his shirt off for a nice extended sequence when they're in the Javelin. And I guess we'll kind of count Grundy. You know, he's got some pretty substantial pecs.
It's true.
Yeah.
He's got a vest on, though.
He's got a vest. I gotta like a vest.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's from watching Magic Mike so many times. I have a love for bare chests and vests.
It wasn't Aladdin.
Oh, fair point.
And that's where it all started.
That's a fair point. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so they all fight, and then they come back, and then it's the reveal of Cthulhu.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to prevent as Cthulhu pops through.
Yeah.
And okay, I think maybe there's one more reason why I'm kind of giving this a bit of a pass. Is there are elements of this that remind me of Justice League: The New Frontier, which I'm always talking about it being my favorite comic.
Mm-hmm.
But without going into full detail of what happens in that story, there's some like slightly Cthulhu-esque monsters going on in that as well.
Yeah. I just rewatched the movie the other day.
It's really good.
It's very good.
Yeah, I think it's one of the best. I mean, it's my favorite comic of all time, and I think that adaptation is pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
So it's MPH as the Flash, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good Flash. It's a very good Barry Allen. But yeah, like I think there's some pieces in here that kind of remind me of that comic, which is also why I'm like giving it a slight pass.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Still a lot going on.
Hey, look, it is. There's a lot that happens in this episode, but I don't know. I totally understand your point, but for me, it never felt gratuitous. Or feel like filler, which a lot of these episodes do, especially if they're just packing in like an extended action sequence to pad out.
I mean, this
part.
was an 8-minute action sequence.
But for me, it didn't drag on though. At no point I was like, "Can you just
yeah,
wrap
I mean, yeah,
this
because
up?"
it was 3 separate. It wasn't as bad as like Superman finding Wonder Woman a couple weeks ago.
Exactly.
Which lasted half the episode.
Yeah, and that was another of those moments too. I'm like, it felt contrived to put them together. And yeah, I guess this is probably no less contrived, but I was a little just more on board with it, I think, because the action's good and I can kind of buy it a little bit more.
Which I also like, coming from the animation industry and the animation side of this, I find it so fascinating that you pad time with action, because action's the most expensive thing to animate.
Yeah.
And so they're not like saving money doing this. Like anime is infamous for doing the freeze frames.
Yeah.
And just constantly cutting and holding on faces. As that is how they pad time.
It definitely seems silly because you're right. It's costs time and money to do it, and I guess because it's always been a kids cartoon, they're like, you can't bore the kids with too much exposition.
Yeah,
so
tell that to Dragon Ball Z.
That's why I don't watch Dragon Ball Z. Amongst many reasons why I don't watch Dragon Ball Z.
There's a lot of shirtless guys in it. A lot of training montages.
Shirtless training montages?
Of course. Who's gonna? Except when they add in weighted clothing. Because that is the anime thing to do. It's like, you want to get stronger, wear this 50-pound vest all the time. Sorry, I didn't say 50, I mean 500-pound vest all the time.
Well, that might do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe I'll watch it up to the point where they start putting on clothes.
Yeah.
Should I talk to my therapist about why I'm so sexually attracted to male cartoon characters?
No. Well, there's a small window. I do have to say, there's a small window, because they start off as children.
Okay.
You don't want to watch it then.
No.
But then there's a 2-year time skip at the end of Dragon Ball before he fights King Piccolo for the first time.
Okay.
So you have like that arc leading into the Raditz arc.
Okay.
Those are your prime shirtless Goku moments.
Oh, okay. Cameron, I also appreciate that you have tricked me into actually listening to you talk about Dragon Ball Z, because you're enticing me with shirtless
I've learned.
men.
I've evolved as a character.
My thirst outweighs my impatience.
The second half of the Frieza arc.
No, we're good.
Yeah, okay.
We're good.
That's the best one, though. That's when he becomes a Super Saiyan.
Okay. More
Super
shirtless?
pecs. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Yeah, at that point, they all lose their shirts because they flex so much.
Oh, ooh, all right. Yeah. All right, now I'm on board.
Yes.
I'm on board. But yeah, I mean, that basically sets up all the stuff that's going to happen in episode 1. And so we'll go ahead and move on to like episode 2 here, where they are able to temporarily banish, we'll just call it what it is, Cthulhu.
It's Cthulhu, yeah.
Back to his dimension. One thing I totally forgot about actually in episode 1, we get Solomon Grundy's backstory.
Oh, yeah.
Totally
Cypress Gold.
Cyrus Gold.
Cyrus Gold.
Yeah, so he was just kind of a ruthless gangster who was double-crossed by some of his fellow gangsters and riddled with bullets via a Tommy gun. In a really, I thought that sequence was actually done pretty well in terms of like the sepia tone, in terms of actually having the blatant violence happen off screen, but that's a great thing about animation and kid stuff. If it's a shadow we're seeing instead of an actual body getting like spasming as it's getting hit by countless bullets. It totally counts. But then they take his body, and they already, I guess the gangsters put some sort of curse on him to begin with, and they dumped him in a swamp which had its own inherent magical properties.
Again, it was two separate kinds of magic they performed there. And I don't remember what the gangster magic was.
Yeah.
So just money. But yeah, because that curse interfered with the voodoo curse on the land.
On the swamp. Yeah. And caused him
Was it a Native American curse?
I don't think so. No.
Okay.
I think the implication is it's a swamp, so...
No, I mean the one they did on Grundy.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. They didn't specify. It's very...
So that is now 5 types of magic in these episodes.
Vague curse is happening on Solomon Grundy, but it creates a unique combination that basically resurrects him as a soulless hulking monster.
Yeah.
And so after he finally learned, because all he wants is gold. Like even when Aquaman tries to lure him into helping them, his promise is a bunch of gold. Once Grundy learns his backstory, he realizes the one thing that he's missing is his soul. And so now that's the thing that he wants back. And it's a little bit unclear if Fate intends to actually help him get his soul back.
I would say no.
It's weird though, because I mean, Fate is an interesting character because I believe he would do whatever it takes for the greater good. He's basically just like Doctor Strange. They are very much similar in terms of not only power set, but also in terms of just their general approach. So I could believe that he would dupe Grundy, but he also he's pretty sincere. He doesn't come off as the kind of person who would lie necessarily. So I feel like he intended to do something to try and help.
Well, this not strange. Sorry, this Fate, I feel like is closer to, because I mean we see Fate for a minute in the Parallax, or not the Parallax, the Return of Green Lantern arc.
Okay.
I guess it's the beginning of Parallax arc. Mm-hmm. And Scepter, where he is kind of this cosmic figure. Because I think I would put him a rank above Strange. Because where Strange is kind of the mortal protector, Dr. Fate feels kind of just like he's almost above all human desire.
So the character even in this episode calls on the Lords of Order to help him in this spell, like casting the spell. And I looked it up very briefly, but the Lords of Order are like a collection of cosmic beings, magical beings in the DC universe. And so I think Nobu, the spirit of Nobu, whatever possesses the helmet of Nobu, is one of those Lords of Order. And so Dr. Fate, who I think is something Kent here.
Yes.
He is an agent of the Lords of Order.
Yes.
And I would agree with you. Yeah, like Doctor Strange wields cosmic power and wields magical abilities beyond other people. Like he's just better at it than other people. Whereas Dr. Fate is like an eternal, powerful being that has a particular agent. So so he is crazy, crazy powerful.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that he wouldn't do it selfish, like as a selfish reason. He just lied to Grundy. I think it would be a more of like, if I do this, that is opening up a door in the cosmic realm that I will never be able to shut again.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Returning a soul to, you are technically dead.
Yeah.
And I cannot, as a being of order and I cannot return a soul to a dead body.
Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, he's just kind of doing what's necessary.
Yes. I said to you what I said because it is what I knew would make you, bring order.
That's fair. And it's Kent Nelson.
Kent Nelson.
Yes. I had the Kent part.
Yeah.
I think that was close. But yeah, so now we can actually get on to part 2. Now we established that very critical piece of information. But yeah, so then we get a little bit more backstory on 2 different fronts. So we get the origins of Atlantis, which in this case is that so Poseidon, who ruled Atlantis at the time, to basically send back the old ones.
Yeah, very well named. The old ones.
Is it with the Lovecraft version? Is the ancient ones?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not far off, really, is it?
And that's I think I brought this up before we started recording. I don't know a lot about Lovecraft.
Yeah.
And Lovecraft Country is not a good base of Lovecraftian storytelling.
Right.
But I know just enough where I know that all of this is a ripoff.
Yeah, I mean, it's blatantly a ripoff.
Yeah.
When they said Cthulhu, you're like, oh, you're not even trying.
Yeah.
You're really not even
Dwayne,
trying. Yeah.
Come on.
But this history of Atlantis is that Poseidon, basically to fend off Cthulhu, forges the trident from all of like the ambient cosmic energy on Earth and uses it to drive them back. But in doing so, he compromises the magic that was keeping Atlantis above the ocean, and it sinks back down to the floor.
Yeah.
So as the big Atlantean stan here of the two of us, how did you feel about that version of the Atlantean origin?
Okay, so the cynic in me is thinking like, hey, ancient Greek man, how about you don't pick a plot of land that's only held up by magic, and how about you just go, Athens didn't sink. You know why? Because it has a fucking foundation under it.
I mean, there's that.
Yeah. No, I was fine with it.
Okay.
It's always some version of that where there's a great magical force that causes Atlantis to split off from the rest of the mainland.
Yeah.
Which then will lead it to collapsing into the ocean.
Yeah.
Obviously, Atlantis: The Lost Empire is my main source.
Of course.
Because it's so good.
It is good.
And it's basically the exact same thing, but it was not the trident, but it was, again, they created a giant defense.
Yeah.
Which caused the city to break off from the rest of Greece.
Bloop, 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 bloop.
Mm-hmm.
Down it goes.
Yep.
Yeah.
All their cool technology.
Yep. All that's sweet blue glowy technology.
Yeah.
I've seen the movie once. I kind of remember it.
It's good.
It's good.
It's very good.
Yeah, it's good.
There's like the more I learn about Atlantis, and the more like, because the story goes all the way back to like Socrates.
Okay.
Like he tells parables of this city of Atlantis.
Yeah.
And like it's been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is so cool that like, the story goes back to ancient Greece.
Yeah. And it's still like has a somewhat relevance to pop culture. It's like so deeply ingrained in the zeitgeist that you can just call something Atlantis. People know all that you need to know there. Yeah.
They get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even Futurama's amazing parody of it.
Oh,
Atlanta.
Yeah. Atlanta. When Atlanta sank. God, that show's so good.
It is.
But yeah, so we get that backstory in Atlantis, and then we also get some backstory on the Thanagarians, who used to worship Cthulhu as a god, and then he granted them basically science and mathematics and philosophy and technology, including the technology that's in Hawkgirl's mace, which we'll eventually come to know as nth metal. But the price, as she puts it, was too high because he basically just would take away the souls of the ancient Thanagarians. And at a certain point, they're like, nah, fuck this. We're done with you. And they just banished him and refused to worship any higher power following that.
Mm-hmm.
Which is also like kind of an interesting way of like setting up a semi-scientific, semi-magical alien race.
Yeah. And also goes great into paralleling her frustration with Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Because when she hears Wonder Woman make these oaths, she's calling forth from a greater power, which is so against Thanagarian code.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things I liked about this episode is that it's about Hawkgirl's lack of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone, I'm basically more or less an atheist. Like I don't really have a sense of faith. Like there are times when I have a hard time understanding people who do have faith. Like, and I can respect it, but I don't get it. And there is almost like a bit of a jealousy that comes to that sometimes. Like it would be nice to be able to have faith in someone or something beyond just, the taking things at face value.
Yeah.
And it's hard to do. And I can appreciate that storytelling here.
I agree. Absolutely. And I think the big difference is understanding our version of faith versus the comic version of faith. Not on the surface level, but like I think Young Justice does a great version of this where Wally refuses to believe magic exists.
Oh,
that everything has a scientific explanation.
Yeah.
Where in this universe we do see this idea of God or this idea of a deity always kind of reverts back to just another creature trying to harness power. I mean, Darkseid is a god to his people.
Mm-hmm.
Cthulhu is a god who can grant this power, but in he is still a person.
Yeah, he's a being. He's a sentient, living, breathing, killable being.
Yeah. But it does kind of make faith such a more interesting question there, because like in a sense you do know there is something bigger, sometimes better, sometimes badder out there. And so to say you don't believe in anything, because what's the what is it from where Superman makes Captain America makes the line,
oh, there's only one God, ma'am, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't dress like that.
Yeah.
It's a great line.
Yeah, and I love that idea in Marvel and in DC, because I feel like Superman could say something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you have literally fought gods.
Yeah.
There's a whole place called New Genesis, which is just new gods.
It's the new gods. Yeah, and even to your point with Hawkgirl and the rest of the Thanagarians, they know that these sort of beings exist. It's not like it's a hypothetical thing of like, oh,
it's not like someone was scamming them.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, was this all just like made up to try and explain like things that could not be explained without developed science, like way back thousands of years ago, and now people still hold on to it?
Yeah,
sort of thing. Like, no, these existed, and so it's her lack of faith is interesting because there is something to believe in, but she refuses to because she and the rest of her people have been scorned. By it. And so that judgment that she then casts, even unintentionally, on other people who have it, she kind of judges Wonder Woman for having it, and she doesn't fully understand Grundy's faith that he will be reunited with his soul after he dies again. And I think knowing that it was building up towards that moment. I mean, obviously the rest of the episode is them just basically like trying to stop the rest of the demons or the beings from going through the portal into Atlantis, and then a splinter group going off and trying to defeat Cthulhu. And ultimately it's Grundy who like cracks through the skull of Cthulhu and basically just goes around and scrambles the inside of his brains. And ultimately it kills him again. It's a really heartbreaking moment, actually, when he dies again, and Hawkgirl is trying to there and comfort him and has to support and encourage Grundy's faith, even though she doesn't have it herself. I mean, I found myself getting emotional when I watched that.
Okay. I didn't.
I mean, I think it might be odd that I did more so than that you didn't.
Well,
so.
I mean, I think because you know what's coming, and I have vague memories of the episode that's coming up where he returns. Like you feel that because you know the rest of the story. Where for me, this is my second time seeing Grundy this year.
Fair. It's not quite the same.
Okay. Yeah. All right. There's another villain gone.
Yeah.
Batman could have saved him probably.
He could have.
And this is, probably getting a little too metaphysical with all of this. But especially when it kind of comes back to these ideas of faith and very westernized. I feel like learning about various mythologies from around the world over the past 9 months. It's interesting to see the idea of kind of a deity that is perfect is a very westernized concept. And infallible. Whereas when you have, going back to like Greek and Norse and Hindu and Chinese mythologies, the gods make mistakes. And I think, having the Thanagarians be like, oh, this guy did one thing wrong, and it's a big thing, he stole souls. Like, pretty big negative. But that's also, a big part of old religions was sacrifice. And so when you have one thing that made him infallible, they're like, oh, we can't believe this anymore. I feel like it's a very Western concept of handling that deity.
And I feel like that also kind of falls along the lines of usually if there is a singular god, that one is infallible, whereas all the mythologies you reference, I'm pretty sure, have multiple gods or multiple deities, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, because that was what I recently started learning about Japanese mythology. And that is what's interesting about them is they are they're what's the word? Not polyamorous.
No.
The other one.
It's a very different thing.
Yep.
I'm not certain what the second part of that is, but like polytheistic? Polytheism?
Yes, polytheistic.
Okay.
There we go.
Also, I want on the record to not look that up and edit that out. Off the dome.
They are polytheistic, especially with their older deities, and they're multi tiers of kammis Kami.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot I have to. There's King Kami. If you've ever watched Dragon Ball, not you, the listeners,
Right.
you know King Kami, and then there's Supreme Kami and Supreme Kai, and there's this tier
Mm-hmm.
of gods that continue to outpace each other. That is very much connected to Japanese myth.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
But yeah, even then, like if a god makes a mistake, that god is like severely punished by the other supreme gods.
Yeah.
And so even like the lower tier deities, like the earth kamis, they like the origin of earth is this weird, stupid story. I think it's kind of stupid, where it's like a male and female deity came to this water planet, and the only way they could get married was they walked the entire length of the globe and then met on the other side for the wedding. But then it's also very bad thinking about it now. The woman talked to the man first, which made the whole ceremony null and void. So they had to do it again,
of course,
under the punishment of the higher up kamis.
Yeah. I mean, that's not too far different from just Adam and Eve.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Exactly.
It's always a woman's fault.
Fucking
hell.
But yeah, so even having these multi-tier, there is always a tier above them that is more kind of infallible.
Oh, okay. They become increasingly infallible as you go up.
Right. Whereas Greek, it's Zeus is the top. He's the one that fucks the most.
Oh, yeah. Zeus gets away with a lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
There was a great video that I saw earlier this week. There was a guy or a guy coming home, and it's a joke on the Mary and Joseph story.
Yeah.
It's like, Joseph, I'm so sorry. I was collecting eggs, and suddenly one of the chickens started to have sex with me, and now I'm pregnant. I don't know what to do. And the guy goes, Zeus.
Zeus. It is always Zeus.
It's always Zeus.
Fucking Zeus. Yeah, like it. I felt like this episode kind of tackled some of these ideas about different types of faith and different types of theology in a way that felt neither ham-fisted nor overly simplified to some degree. Like it's not necessarily about what people believe in, but whether they believe in it or not.
Yeah.
And I think they did a nice job letting that dynamic unfold. And I think it was a smart choice in their part also to focus on Hawkgirl. One, because we just don't get a lot of Hawkgirl stories in this up to this point. But two, she's more complicated, I think, than the other ones. I also love that this gave an opportunity to form a friendship between Hawkgirl and Grundy. Like
and anyone, really.
And anyone,
like
yeah,
everyone kind of hates on Hawkgirl at this point.
You know, she has her blooming romance with GL. But other than that, like she doesn't necessarily have friends and acquaintances, something like that. And so just that it is a sweet relationship of like, you know, Grundy and Birdnose. I love that he calls her Birdnose. Mm-hmm. It's really, really cute. And of course, that's going to come back again in JLU. But I bought into that friendship, and because I was along for the emotional journey of the friendship, it allowed me to just be on board with the whole thing. And I was able to forgive it for its more absurd blatant plagiarism.
Yeah. After just talking about it, and like this is, you know, we had a very long talk about faith, which is not something that we normally
I know,
do.
right? Surprising for us.
It is, I guess, like that is in one sense very important for kids to see.
Yeah.
And kind of understanding that people have different faiths and beliefs, and some more magical than others.
Exactly. And it's not a purely religious based faith, which is what makes it kind of nice. It's more just like faith in something more than yourself, which doesn't have to be a god in the very traditional like westernized version as we are often told it is.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, I went to like a Jesuit university, and I'm like
as did I,
a fucking atheist. I had to take religion classes, you know, and I found interesting things to like think about and mull over when I was there. Actually, the theology of marriage is one of my favorite classes.
Oh,
which is weird from someone who is both an atheist and not necessarily inclined to get married.
Yeah.
So.
And mine was interreligious studies.
See, that would be interesting.
It was very fun.
Yeah.
We just watched South Park a lot.
That's fantastic, as you should. But yeah, I mean, so there's this beautiful moment where Grundy sacrifices himself, which it was ultimately the end game there, right? Like he was going to be sacrificed for the spell, and this time he chooses to sacrifice himself to defeat Cthulhu. And then, you know, Hawkgirl is very upset about it, and, you know, basically tells him like, to have faith that you'll be reunited with your soul. And then the nice thing is they had that really sweet burial sequence at the end where they're all standing there, and Hawkgirl has done a burial based on Earth customs, and so Grundy is buried with a grave just as Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday. Which, do you know why it says born on a Monday?
It's part of the children's rhyme.
Exactly. Yeah.
Born on Monday, christened on Tuesday, something on Wednesday. I don't remember the rhyme anymore.
So, do you want the full version? It just has more words. It's not that much longer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it was I just remember from Injustice, that was the combo, was you would get him to say his rhyme.
Oh, okay.
And he was my favorite character to play.
Okay, I mean,
Solomon was so fucking broken in that game.
He's great. But yeah, so it's Solomon Grundy, born on a Monday, christened on a stark and stormy Tuesday, married on a gray and grisly Wednesday, took ill on a mild and mellow Thursday, grew worse on a bright and breezy Friday, died on a gray and glorious Saturday, buried on a baking, blistering Sunday. That was the end of Solomon Grundy.
Doesn't rhyme as well.
I think if I had said Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Grundy, it may have worked better. I over-enunciated, as I'm wont to do. Yes. But I really like that final little tag there, which is really nice. And then I have kind of one more big thing on this. If we're talking about blatant ripoffs and plagiarism.
Oh, I love to.
This episode is actually kind of just copied and pasted from the Defenders comics, the Marvel's Defenders comics.
Okay, yeah, I read a few things about that.
Yes, exactly. So specifically, the initial pairing of the four people trying to reseal this breach. So of Aquaman, Dr. Fate, Inza, who's
Dr. Fate's
wife, yes, and partner, and then Solomon Grundy. Those are essentially the equivalents for the Defenders, which are Namor, Doctor Strange, Clea, who has the same relationship to Strange as Inza has to Fate, and then Solomon Grundy is essentially the Hulk.
Yeah.
And I guess even in the comics, Hulk refers to Fate as Stupid Magician, Hawkgirl as Bird Nose. Oh no, yeah, Aquaman as Fishman, and that's what Hulk calls those same characters in the comics as well. So
Dwayne.
Yeah. It's like I'm choosing to treat that more of like an homage.
Yeah, that's an ode.
Yes, an homage to those those old comics rather than as like a blatant ripoff. And I love stuff like that. Like I really loved it's not quite the same, but in X-Men Evolutions, there's one episode that actually unites the 5 original X-Men on a mission. It's like it's little things like that of like, okay, it's fun to have these surprising pairings and knowing that it came from a place in the comics.
Yeah,
even if it's the other comics. In the case here, but no, I really, really love these episodes. They're some of my favorites. Super excited to see the follow through on it once we eventually get to Justice League Unlimited. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, have I convinced you to like these episodes more after our long conversation? Also,
slightly
spanning faith.
I don't think I don't want to say that I didn't hate these episodes.
Okay,
but it just was. There was a lot going on.
Yeah, that's
it's just
fair.
Kind of meh. Because even like we skidded through a lot of what happened in that second half of the episode. In the second episode, Aquaman goes back to Atlantis and uses his troops as fodder to get through the breach on his own.
He calls some whales in to come smack around some demons.
Superman and Wonder Woman are also fighting the breach from the other side, and then it's kind of this aquatic Ex Machina.
Oh yeah,
where Aquaman comes in the middle of a monster and just bursts out.
I mean, he is a badass.
Yeah, like that's 10 minutes of this episode is jumping between those two, and that is you don't need any of that. None of that is important to this story.
It's decent action, and it does help pad the time a little bit. It's a nice like counterpoint to what's going on with like the Grundy Hawkgirl stuff too.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I really, really like these. And the nice thing is I know I'll win when it comes to the shortlist conversation
because we have to
include it.
Yeah, I'll pull up my argument when we get there.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Okay, well, to be determined down the line here. All right, so why don't we kind of wrap things up here? Why don't we do plugs, your question, and then we'll wrap things up with some notes from friends.
Cool.
So what do you got to plug this week, Cameron?
I had a very themed week this week. I watched a documentary on Amazon, which has been on my list for a while, called The Orange Years.
Okay.
And it is the history of Nickelodeon.
Oh, okay.
It is amazing. Nickelodeon's always been very, very close to my heart since I was a wee lad. And the Orange Years, it spans kind of 1975, when the original concept of kind of a children's network started, through 2000.
Okay.
Following kind of the main woman that ran that sect of Viacom at the time, who was just an amazing woman.
Yeah.
I just blanked on her name, and I'm so sorry. You deserve so much better than this.
Honestly, Cameron.
But she basically came and like created the Discovery Channel and a bunch of other channels outside of that. Her and her husband are like very well-known executive producers around Hollywood. But like the first line of the documentary is, this channel was made by women. And they talk about like at every stage there was always a very powerful woman in the studio making Nickelodeon happen.
Had no idea.
But yeah, it is fascinating. Going back to, I'll do a very quick, because this part I found so fascinating because I didn't know anything about this at the start. Have you ever heard of Cube? Qube?
It's ringing some sort of vague bell in the back of my brain.
It was an experiment done in the 70s for television, for television viewers and I guess the audience. That was kind of paired with a Nielsen box.
Okay, Nielsen
box, thank you.
Yeah, the Nielsen rating boxes.
Yeah, the Kent Nielsen box.
Exactly.
Where you would get kind of this multi-button remote that would interact with the TV. And so they made custom programming back then. So like the biggest show was kind of an America's Got Talent, American Idol kind of spinoff, where you would have a live performance come on and you could vote if you wanted them to move forward or not live as they were performing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And that would determine how long they got to continue their set for.
Yeah.
If a lot of people said no, they'd cut them off at 1:30. Very Gong Show-esque.
Sure.
But it was this experiment done in like the middle of Missouri. And it didn't last very long. It lasted like a year and they canned it. But I knew nothing about that.
Yeah.
And that is fascinating. That was in the 70s. That was 1975. They were already trying this, which like still hasn't been figured out to this day.
But Lord, did they keep trying?
Do they keep trying? Yeah. Quibi is because of that. But yeah, it is a very fun, very like warm documentary, especially when they get to the animation era, which is what I know best.
Of course.
And they're like, oh yeah, how did Doug become to be? It's like, oh, like the pitch was bad. Like it made no sense.
Yeah.
But the guy who created Doug, dresses like Doug every day. That's just his normal outfit. Is the green sweater vest with the white button-down undershirt and then the khakis.
Oh my god.
It's just who he is.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, we just wanted him around. He was just so nice. Everyone's like, yeah, we'll just give him anything. We just don't want him to leave.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil too much of it, but highly go recommend check out that.
The Orange Years?
Yes, the Orange Years. And then from that, there's another weird experiment that I watched, which I told you about earlier this week, called Pluto TV.
Yeah.
Also done by Viacom. And it's kind of this, it's a free channel. I don't want to call it a streaming service, but it's kind of like this in-between space between cable and streaming. And it is a bunch of kind of individualized channels on this free platform. So a lot of classic stuff, which is what I've been kind of flipping through a lot. So there's an Addams Family channel, which just plays randomized reruns of Addams Family. They have like the Carol Burnett Show, who's the former host of The Tonight Show.
Johnny Carson.
There's a whole channel for him. Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore Show. Bob Ross. And then going into the reason I jumped into it is they'll give a couple hour block of the old Nick Game shows.
Oh, okay.
So going back and watching Double Dare and Hidden Temple and Guts. And yeah, what a great time. Last thing I'll say about the documentary, because I just loved this moment. They talk about, they're interviewing the kids from all that, because they filmed that in Orlando in Universal Studios.
That's right.
That was the actual studio.
Yeah.
And they basically said like they'd break for lunch and it was a contest between the kids to see who could escape their handler and just hide in the park for the longest. And so most of them just like wouldn't eat lunch. The second they broke, they'd run and get on the rides.
Yeah.
And just like who could escape set the longest was the game they would play daily. And as a kid, that sounds amazing. As a now adult, I'm like, fuck, that would be so problematic on so many levels.
I would feel bad for the PAs who are responsible to try and track these kids down.
Exactly. Because these are like well-known kids. It's like obviously the rest of the rest of the crew, Universal, probably knew them.
Yeah.
And you've definitely had some that were on their side.
Yeah.
No one, fucked the man. And like that world sounds like a dream world.
Yeah. Very different time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not too surprised that your theme of your bat plugs this week was nostalgic Nickelodeon. But I love it. Those both sound amazing.
Yes,
so.
highly recommend both of them. Pluto TV is just this. I feel like there's something for everyone on there.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, there are commercials. Which is why it's free.
Yeah, it's why it's not a paid subscription. So.
Yeah.
And then I know you've mentioned before, but we talked so much about mythology this week. You're listening to a book on tape, or you're listening to a podcast about mythology? What's it called? I think it's worth throwing in here because we've talked about it so much this week.
Yeah, it's an audiobook. Well, there's two kind of parallel things that I've been listening to together.
Mm-hmm.
There's an audiobook just called Mythology Mega Saga.
Okay.
Which is it's basically a compilation of a bunch of different mythology books. Which is weird that it's just one credit on Audible.
Mm-hmm.
Sponsor of this week, Audible.
Right. Yes.
Because it's kind of 8 different books, and you can even tell because it's a different narrator for each section.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But it goes over Greek mythology, Norse mythology, Japanese, Hindu, Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Chinese. It's amazing.
Okay.
They go over the main gods and then kind of give summaries of the big stories of those mythologies.
Yeah.
But then there's also a podcast called Myths and Legends.
Myths and Legends. Okay.
Which does a great breakdown. I found it because they do great deep dive into Arthurian legends, which I'm also a big sucker for.
Yes, as we have established.
Yes. He dabbles a little bit in Polynesian mythologies, which I'm also a big sucker for.
Yes.
It's great.
Okay.
It's a very, very well-made podcast.
Nice. Okay, yeah, we're throwing those in the show notes down there if you guys want to do a little more of a deep dive on mythology, since this was a very mythology-heavy episode.
What about you? What have you been listening, watching, reading?
I watched a movie this last week called Mommy Dearest, which is kind of one of those movies that is so culturally like imbued that once you see it, you recognize the references. But so the movie stars Faye Dunaway playing the classic film actress Joan Crawford. So it's Faye Dunaway playing Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford was a very famous actress in like the 30s and on. She had a very famous feud with Bette Davis, which was covered in the film Feud. And then their off-screen difficulties then like seeped into their on-screen personas in another film called Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, if you want to go see like an actual Joan Crawford movie. But so this is essentially a biopic, and it's a weird movie, and it was kind of pitched to me as like super high camp, which it basically is. So we're always talking about good bad movies and bad good movies. Like a good bad movie being one that is like just really terribly made, but it's fun to watch because
90% of Jean-Claude Van Damme's.
Exactly, Jean-Claude Van Damme. Yeah, I mean, I think our classic example is Batman Forever, and especially Batman and Robin. A good bad movie, like a fun watch, even though if it's not necessarily well made. Whereas a bad good movie is one that was intended to be, like this epic masterpiece and just completely falls apart. I'm looking at you. Dark Knight Rises is my classic example of that.
I was going to say anything James Cameron that's not Titanic.
Well, hang on. True Lies. Whoa, wait. Whoa.
Sorry,
Cameron.
I'll go back. It's just Avatar.
Back the flying fuck up here. Terminator.
Yep.
Terminator 2.
Yep.
True Lies.
Never seen it.
Titanic. True Lies is my personal favorite of his because it's kind of a James Bond spoof.
Okay.
Sort of, but it's also very sincere. I don't know.
I'm sorry. It's just Avatar for everyone that's not me.
Exactly. Yeah. But I mean, there are lots of examples in recent history of, what I often refer to as Oscar Bation sort of films. A lovely portmanteau of Oscar bait and masturbation for obvious reasons. Yeah. This is somehow both a good bad movie and a bad good movie. Like it was intended to be like an Oscar contender. It was made with absolute seriousness, but it is also horribly directed and like terribly edited. And the thing is it starts out at 11 and never lets up.
Good.
Like it is.
Hell yeah.
It is just constantly like this absolute extremes, because the story is basically it's adapted from an autobiography of Christine Crawford, who was the adopted daughter of Joan Crawford, and basically just details what a psycho Joan Crawford was and all the abuse that Christine and her brother Christopher suffered at the hands of this woman who like was just this vainglorious, insane monster. And so there's these like extremes, these moments that are absolutely insane. Like I think the most famous one, and I guess if you're a big RuPaul fan, they make constant reference to this movie, and I'm that one gay that doesn't watch RuPaul. But there's this whole scene where Joan Crawford shows up in the middle of the night in like full-on face mask, like her face is bleached almost Joker white, and she comes across a wire hanger, and like her daughter's dressed on a wire hanger in the closet, and she has this total meltdown about no wire hangers. Like that's like its peak insanity, but it never wavers too far from that. So it's a very bizarre piece. And it has this sort of like pop culture resonance because it's just so over the top. Mm-hmm. Like I did enjoy it a lot. It doesn't, I will say this ahead of time, it's not really quite a spoiler, but it doesn't necessarily have a super satisfying ending to it because it's a true story. Like you don't get that like real punch of like comeuppance that you kind of want, given how terrible Joan Crawford is, the way she's portrayed.
Yeah.
But it's totally weird. And if you like have heard of it, it's worth watching. It's worth watching. It's intense. It's also, and it's hard to do right now, obviously, because we're in a pseudo sort of quarantine lockdown situation, but it's also best enjoyed with a group who you can all kind of laugh at with the film.
Yeah.
Like, it is funny if you're the group of people who can just go like, oh my God, this is so insane and ridiculous. Like, we're all going to laugh at it. So it's one of those weird movies. You can kind of watch it as like a disaster and failed filmmaking at the same time as it is just like stupid and fun. Mm-hmm. Very bizarre movie. But yeah, check that one out.
Interesting.
It's a weird one. Yeah. So that's my major plug this week. And then, as I mentioned last week, we've now joined the Pod Tower on YouTube with the DCAU Watchtower. And actually, I always call them that. That's just their Twitter handle. They're the Watchtower Database. Oh, yeah. For the Watchtower Database and the DCAU Review. And so just want to give a shout out to the DCAU Review, whose latest episode that came out on Saturday, the day we're recording this, is all about the Batman Beyond episode, The Final Cut, which is one of the Curare episodes. Ooh. So yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, so go check out their stuff too. So I think that does it for plugs. And then why don't we get to your question, Cameron?
Yeah, it's I guess it's more of a prompt than a question.
Mm-hmm. Is it a writing prompt? Do I have a
yes.
a blue book that I have to write out a pencil drawn answer for 4 or 5 pages in 2 hours?
I also need sketches.
Oh shit! All right, I'm out.
Yeah,
I can't draw.
So as people who've been listening to this know, I am an avid Disneyland theme park obsessor.
Yes.
And so I was trying to imagine, because, we have Marvel Land coming out eventually whenever Disneyland reopens. But DC properties are usually teamed up with Six Flags.
Yeah.
And they do decent theming, good rides, but the theming is never really there to match the Disney quality.
Yeah.
So my prompt/question was, what would a DC theme park, and there's a difference between theme park and amusement parks. Yes. What a DC theme park look like? And I asked you help pitch a land and a ride.
Yes.
What would one section of this theme park look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I thought about this a little bit, and obviously I immediately gravitated towards Gotham because it's the most popular one. It's the most likely thing. It makes the
most sense.
Yeah, it makes the most sense. You could do a lot with that. Batman has the best rogues gallery. So I was trying to think of rides that would center around Batman's rogues gallery. And there are many more to come up with, but the two that sprang to mind immediately that I latched onto. One would be a duck paddle boat ride inside the Iceberg Lounge.
Yep.
So, which I think would just have like, it'd be cool to see like the theming of it. You can imagine it would look similar to the way it does in the new Batman Adventures of like this big old fashioned lounge around the outside. And in the middle is like a big lagoon with maybe a big iceberg in the middle. And everyone's out on little ducky paddle boats.
Okay.
Fuck, you could do it Pirates of the Caribbean style.
That's exactly what I was
also
thinking.
have a restaurant, like
That
an
is
actual
That
restaurant.
was the exact thought I had.
Yeah.
Was definitely just remake Blue Bayou.
Yeah, exactly. But it's Iceberg Lounge. I think it'd be really fun. Everyone's dressed up in tuxedos, and you can make a whole thing out of it. So that was one, and the other one I had was a Killer Croc chase through the sewers ride.
You just really want sewers to be a big component of
I
this,
do,
don't you?
really do. But so I forget, Cameron, have you played the Arkham games?
I have.
So you played Arkham Asylum then, the first one.
Yes.
So you remember the big croc sequence is you're trying to like track down the bits of the plant spores in the sewers, and you have to like very carefully walk across the wooden planks and not disrupt Croc, or else he'll come and chase you. So the idea was basically make that into a kind of roller coaster style ride. So you're like strapped into like a proper roller coaster type car, but you start out like, say Space Mountain, for example, there's like that part where you're kind of slowly ramping up to get to the top before you go and it goes all crazy. You're doing that, but you're moving slowly. And the story reason behind it is that you're creeping through the sewers trying to avoid or escape from Croc.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's moments where like, you go over a spot and you can see the water bubbling, or you see like a shadow going through like on a side tunnel, like you're kind of trying to navigate around him. And then at a certain point, he spots you, and then the ride actually kicks into full speed. So now you're on a roller coaster kind of going through sewer tunnels trying to escape him. And you can build in lulls in the speed of like you think you've escaped him and you slow down again for a little bit, and then he reappears and you speed up again. So it's like a way to take the roller coaster mechanics, which occasionally require you to slow down, but build it around a narrative of you trying to escape from Croc, and then interweave it with high-speed sections.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
I know I really want to go on this ride after I came up with it. I'm like, damn, this sounds amazing.
I feel that pain a lot.
Yeah. But yeah, those are the two that I came up with. What did you have?
I love that.
Yeah.
I was trying to break out of the general mold, because like obviously Gotham is the go-to, Metropolis would be the go-to.
Right.
And so I was trying to think of like what would be a
Atlantis? Is yours in Atlantis?
It's Atlantis. No, I was trying to think of like what would be a comparison to Tomorrowland that's not Metropolis.
Okay.
And I would love a new Genesis
land. Okay. Yeah.
I don't know what you could do there exactly, because the only ride I thought of was for Gotham.
Of course.
But I think having a new Genesis themed area, because especially after seeing like Pandora done so well, you can do these huge scale futuristic sci-fi cities done to impeccable detail. And then also doing a lot of looking into Super Mario World that just opened in Japan, which just looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
I think there's something very unique they can do there. Like I said, I don't know enough to think of a ride at the moment. But something like the jetpacks that everyone has. Riding on there's the ride in Pandora where you're riding on the back of an Ikran or a Banshee. Yes, I did have to do that. Which is like one of the best rides I've ever been on.
Yeah.
But I'm just imagining that, but instead of riding the Banshee, you're riding on the back of Orion, just guiding you around the city,
which I'm sure he would love.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what the ride for this would be, but I was thinking you can either make it part of the ride and make it kind of like the Hogwarts ride at either the Universal parks, or just have this be the queue, but I want to physically walk around the Bat Cave.
Oh, that would be
some
cool.
Capacity.
Yeah.
So obviously one of the rides is going to be in the Batmobile.
Yeah.
That, kind of your test track, kind of your cars ride, where it's slow then fast, then slow then fast. But yeah, I like your ideas a lot better, having them based around the villains.
Yeah.
I should have put a lot more thought into this, and I will definitely put more thought into this after we record.
But yeah, I like that. I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, you could do a test track style Batmobile, like a Batmobile pursuit thing across the city. But yeah, the line to get into it, you go through the Batcave, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah, and then also thinking about like Disneyland Paris, where they just have so many walkthrough things, which I think is so fascinating, and it's such a foreign idea to Americans, just walk places.
Yeah. How dare we?
I know, but one of the things I love is underneath their castle, there is the dragon's lair, and you can actually walk through and see a sleeping dragon. So you're supposed to be quiet to not wake it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, just loving that idea of like you can, like Wayne Manor is one of the buildings you can walk through, and if you find the secret, there's like almost like Pirate's Lair on Tom Sawyer's Island. There could be like these secret passages that lead you to different parts of the Bat Cave downstairs.
That would be cool. Yeah. You can go into the Batwing hangar, the Batboat dock.
Yeah, that'd be so much
the
fun.
Armory. Yeah. Wherever Nightwing works out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can use sock foo.
Exactly. Sock food in the laundry room of Wayne Manor.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
Yeah. If you haven't looked at Super Nintendo Land, it is the like you look at concept art and you look at real photos, and like this can't be real. There's no way this exists in reality.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful.
No, it's gonna be exciting once it opens up.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to go back to Japan.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I don't think that was much of a push to get you to do that, though, was it? But I would love to hear people's suggestions on this. I think this is a really interesting topic. Yeah, so if you have suggestions for things you want to see in a Disney level themed DC park, whether it's like a walkthrough exhibit or just the theming of it, the design or
to
the
give
rides.
like a basic template for what Disney rides are. There's the high-speed rides, which is kind of what we pitched. There's the dark rides, which are the more storytelling.
Pirates of the Caribbean, Haunted Mansion.
Yeah. There's the interactive things and the VR rides, kind of like your
Toy Story or
no, Star Tours.
Oh, Star Tours, yeah.
Yeah. And then the ride in Pandora.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are kind of the main three. Thinking about restaurant theming.
Oh,
Iceberg
yeah,
Lounge is a
Iceberg
huge
Lounge,
one.
yeah.
Something with Poison Ivy, I think would be very fun there.
Yeah, her botanical gardens, something in there. Yeah, no, I mean, it's an untapped concept, really.
Yeah,
and, I would love to hear people's thoughts. Yeah, so I think for that, the best place is to send it to probably Instagram.
Yes.
Timm Talk Pod. Instagram's probably best because that way Cameron might see it too. But also Twitter is a great place too because I keep it on the Twitter.
Yeah.
And along those lines, if you don't want Cameron to see it, send it on Twitter. I'll look at it. Along those lines, we have a few notes we'll get through real quick as we wrap things up here. So Jake, aka the Overvoid on Twitter, who's always lovely and sends in messages, wrote in to talk about Earth 50 because we were talking about that with the Justice Lords.
Okay.
And he pointed out, he basically said, look up Earth 50 Wonder Woman and Batman. It's really messed up. And I forgot that I'd actually read the comics that dive into all this stuff. So Earth 50 was concluded in the ongoing Batman Beyond series. And I've read all of it, like up to a certain point. And so this big volume, for those who want to go check it out, is Batman Beyond 2.0, Volume 2, Justice Lords Beyond. But it basically... there's a point where the comic Beyond Terry, which is not quite the same as the DCAU, but it's kind of half DCAU, half comic books to some degree.
Yeah.
But he ends up in the Justice Lords timeline. And I won't go into exact specifics of what happens. I think that they're worth reading. They're pretty good. But the story of what happens to Wonder Woman in the DCAU beyond the show, and then also her Justice Lord's counterpart, is really, really like dark and twisted and messed up, and even more twisted than what we saw in the show, which makes sense. It's a comic book versus the cartoon. But yeah, go check that out. So thanks, Jake, for writing in and reminding me that was a thing because it's really, really fucking weird. And then I also want to give a shout out to Justin Eddins on Twitter, who's at SuperKid801, who just like every week, always like likes and retweets pretty much everything we post and is always lovely and just chiming in on comments on Twitter and Instagram. And, I just want to give him a general shout out for always just being such an awesome guy and so supportive.
Thanks,
and he's super supportive of all the other stuff too. The Watchtower Database Boys, DCA Review, Susan Eisenberg, a lot of the cast when they post stuff. He's always jumping in and being just a totally awesome guy. So thank you.
We really appreciate that.
Yeah. And then the last thing here, I actually have a question for you, Cameron. Yes, a double question corner this week. So we got a message from our friend on YouTube, Solomon Sultani, who has written in a few times and written us questions before. And so he said, he started off with saying, Cameron doubting his Green Lantern knowledge like GL doubting his powers in this episode was great. He was laughing at that. But he said, seriously, though, I have a question for Cameron. I don't know a whole lot about Green Lantern Corps compared to the rest of the DC universe. Is there any book or comic book or guide that one should read to better familiarize themselves with the Green Lantern lore? So is there a comic you would recommend or a starting point you'd recommend?
Oh, man, that's tough because I started in the middle, but I think that is the best when Jeff John first comes in with Rebirth and then kind of hits his peak at Blackest Night. I started at Blackest Night.
So worth noting, this is Green Lantern Rebirth from like the early 2000s?
Yeah, 2001, 2003.
Right, not the universe-spanning Rebirth titles that came out 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
Yes, sorry. Yes, that is a very good
it gets messy.
difference we need to make.
Yes,
GL Rebirth.
Okay.
Is kind of when they reset Hal Jordan's character.
Okay.
That was, like we said, 2001 or 2003. If you want to learn about just him, that's probably the best place to jump in. And he has great story arcs. There's Tales of the Core, which started shortly after, which follows my Guy Gardner stuff and all of the other Lanterns, which is very fun. It's very broken storytelling. So you'll follow like one character for a couple pages and you won't see them again for like 5 issues.
Oh, interesting.
So that's better for just like if you're binging comics, so you can keep them all in order. But for me, honestly, like Blackest Night is where I jumped in the middle, and you get an idea of all the Lantern, because I love it because there's so many cores at that point. You learn about the whole spectrum, and it, especially if you enjoy JLU, when it gets to the point where like all of Earth's heroes get rings, and you have like Mira as a Red Lantern and Flash as a Blue Lantern, and Scarecrow and Lex, and like heroes and villains get to be part of this universe. Like that is like peak Green Lantern for me.
So because I know there's some pretty dense, complicated stuff in there, and I'm pretty sure you've made reference to like having to do like constant research while reading that when you read it when you were younger. So
Final Crisis, which I think is the densest of the multiverse stories.
Because we talked about this earlier this year, because I read all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, it was dense beyond my comprehension. I consider myself pretty knowledgeable about DC Comics.
Final Crisis kills so many people, and Blackest Night is the story that comes out of that.
Okay.
Where the Black Lantern is powered from death. And there was basically so much death that happened in Final Crisis that he became overwhelmingly powerful in an instant and used that to take over the universe. And everyone that died basically becomes a zombie lantern.
Great.
Yes.
Is there anything you would recommend reading prior to Blackest Night? Like, would Rebirth help getting into Blackest Night, or are you just gonna have to go into Blackest Night knowing you're gonna have to do some background research?
I mean, that's just kind of how I did it.
Okay.
And it's not ideal. I mean, now you have a lot more opportunity for backlogs. When I read it, I was reading the paperbacks.
Yeah.
And so it was all just being on Wikipedia with every page.
Yeah. I mean, I did that earlier this year when I got through the whole Grant Morrison run on Batman. Lots of time spent, hours spent just trying to figure out the right reading order.
But also like the 2 animated films are great, Emerald Knights and First Flight.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I just started rewatching the animated series.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
After watching Clone Wars now, I realized it's just a ripoff of Clone Wars.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure it is.
Yeah. It's them going, I guess it's closer to Rebels.
Okay.
Because it's them trying to find like Green Lanterns out in this void space to help them fight the Red Lanterns.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's okay. I mean, my favorite character is Saint Walker in all of the Green Lantern universe outside of Kyle Rayner. And he pops up a couple times in that series.
Okay. I feel like those are good places, to get, because that's the thing. These shows are often a good starting point to get the basics in place. I'd say in terms of comics, I think I read Green Lantern Secret Origins with Jeff Johns, which is basically a retelling of Hal Jordan's origin a few years ago. I think it's relatively self-contained. I know they did an Earth 1 Green Lantern, which I haven't read, but a lot of the Earth 1 stuff is pretty good. I really love
Sinestro War. That's a big one.
Okay, that's a big one.
That's kind of the first splinter into the other colors.
But I also feel like that's another one too that's like, it helps if you have some background knowledge, maybe a little bit going in.
I mean, it's just kind of Sinestro knowledge, which you get from First Flight.
Okay. Because I was going to say other places to look for like more simplified Green Lantern stories. I think I haven't read the Earth one. That might be worth checking out. And then I'm going to plug it again, but DC New Frontier. I mean, Hal Jordan's a primary character in that.
Great arc in New Frontier.
Yeah, exactly. And it's much more about Hal and his personality and his story than it is specifically Green Lantern. But again, if you're looking for an origin story for Hal, I think that's a great one to go to because you get so much more, and it's going to introduce you to other characters in that universe that are going to pop up in things like probably Sinestro War and Blackest Night too.
Yeah.
So.
Or if you just want a completely side story post Blackest Night and Brightest Day, there's an arc called New Guardians, which follows just Kyle.
Okay.
Where the premise is out of the blue one day, he suddenly gets a ring from every corps, and it causes this huge fight between all the kind of head of the Lanterns.
Okay.
Of like, why is this guy being chosen? And you get to see him wield every color.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh fuck, Kyle
So,
is the coolest.
I do love that all of your suggestions are some of the most like dense, complicated Green Lantern stories. So I'd say maybe to answer the specific question.
Well, it depends on like what aspect of Green Lantern you want to follow, because a lot of them do follow Hal, but I love the stories that go beyond just him.
And I think the question may have been like maybe a good starting point. So I think maybe your original answer of like Rebirth.
Yeah, Rebirth is the best place to
Rebirth
start,
might be a good place to start. And if you're liking that, then yeah, I think Blackest Night, Sinestro War, whatever you just said.
Yeah, because Rebirth leads into Sinestro Corps, which leads into Rage of the Red Lanterns. And then that basically leads into Blackest Night.
Okay, yeah.
For just the Green Lantern straight arc.
Yeah, so the TL...
Agent Orange is in there a little bit, but that's not super important.
Okay, so
that's just Fireflies.
The TLDR answer is Rebirth.
Yes.
Yes. Jeff Johns' Rebirth from the early 2000s, not the DC Universe Rebirth. Yes. So there you go.
There it is.
There we go. But
wow, I have read more than I thought I've read. That was wow.
And yet you still struggle so much talking Green Lantern in this
There's
podcast.
so much. There's so much.
But no, thanks Solomon for writing in with the comment and for the question.
Yes.
Yeah, and so you can find us if you have thoughts on these episodes, questions for us to answer, if you have suggestions for Cameron's thoughts about the DC-based theme park. You can find us at Timm Talk Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Gmail, and YouTube. We're also now up on the Pod Tower as well on YouTube. So go subscribe to that and find some other great DCAU content from our friends.
Yeah.
So, and you can find me at Lordifer on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, if you want to see my art, you can find that at Cameron.Dexter. If you want to see my face, you can find that at CamDexter_adventures.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that does it for us this week. We'll be back next week to talk about Secret Society, which is going to see the return of Gorilla Grodd.
Ooh.
So of our remaining...
Gorilla City.
Gorilla City, yes. Of our remaining episodes, that's the only one I don't remember off the top of my head, so that'll be a fun thing to explore.
Good.
As we enter the home stretch here, heading towards Starcrossed. So,
which one?
It's a small episode.
Okay, it's just the single episode, right?
Yeah, it's just a one-part thing. Has absolutely no repercussions for any of the rest of the DC universe going forward.
Cool. I kind of need just like a break from.
Yeah, yeah. It's a small little thing. Yeah, very digestible. But no, thanks for listening as always, everyone, and we'll see you then.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Ba, 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 ba.
Bye.